What is up, guys? This is Will Sports, and today I'm going to be covering the Week 4 college football slate. It was a great day of games. There were so many big matchups. I think there were 6 ranked matchups, and then you had a few that weren't ranked versus ranked matchups, but were games that people were very much anticipating watching. Like I said, it was a great day of football. It was a lot of games that were going to shake up, the rankings and certain teams that we haven't learned too much about up to this point in the season because they haven't played the toughest competition. We finally got to see them against, teams that are sort of equal to them or should be equal to them, basically. So I think the first game I'm going to jump into, Colorado and Oregon. This is the game, Colorado obviously has been the story of college football this season, a team that everyone is very fascinated with because of Deion Sanders and his son Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter, Shiloh Sanders, Jimmy Horn, all these different guys. And they've been exciting and they've been very, fun to watch. And it's been cool to see them take college football by storm and kind of bring different people to the sport that haven't been really watching. But they have been a team that's obviously been very hyped up by the media, and they have talked a lot. And today, Oregon took that personally, and Oregon came out in front of very jump, absolutely obliterated Colorado. From the jump, you could just tell that Oregon was faster, stronger, bigger, and just better. And then also having this game at home with that amazing crowd that was at Austin, it just was a tough uphill battle for Colorado to win this game. And Oregon, like I said, they dominated this game, especially in the first half. They were up 35-0 at the half. Bo Nix was slinging the ball around, getting the ball out quick. He was 28 of 33 on the day. He had 276 yards and 3 touchdowns. He was just, his progression as a college quarterback has been great. I don't know if his ability will translate to the NFL, but he's gotten so much better as a quarterback. And, Colorado could offer no pass rush. They weren't tackling. There was receivers wide open with no one within, a few feet of them, like nobody at all. I don't know how they were having so many breakdowns that consistently, but Oregon's receivers were just wide open. It was like it was a scrimmage or something. On the other side of the ball, Oregon was just, getting to Shedeur Sanders pretty much whenever they wanted. 7 sacks for Oregon. Now, some of that I thought was Shedeur's fault because there were certain plays where he took sacks and I felt like he could have threw the ball away. Obviously, the offensive line is bad. I'm not saying that all the sacks are his fault, but I feel like there was a few plays where, there was going to be pressure on him, but he didn't have to necessarily take the sack, just throw the ball out of bounds, but it's not his fault that there was pressure because at the end of the day, you need time in the pocket to be able to make throws and deliver the ball. But I really thought this game would be closer. I didn't think Colorado was going to win. I actually thought Oregon would win by 2 scores, but I thought Colorado's offense would be able to get something going, and I thought Shedeur would have a great game again. But like I said, the offensive line was just so bad, and Shedeur didn't have much time to be able to, make his throws and set his feet and beat, and all that type of stuff. So, and they had absolutely no run game, but that's been they haven't had a run game the entire season. They've been kind of an air raid type of offense. Like, we're just going to have to air it out and, that's the way we're going to score. And it just didn't work today. And I liked Colorado's matchup with their receivers against Oregon secondary. I thought that was something that could be good for Colorado, but obviously I was wrong. I do think it mainly came down though to the fact that Shedeur wasn't getting that much time, and Oregon was doing was faster. Like I said, they were a faster team, and they were recovering quick, making open field tackles every single time. And Colorado it was all the sacks and all the pressure they were getting on Colorado was forcing them into second and third and longs. And when you're having to convert a 3rd and 17, every fucking time you're on a 3rd down, you're probably not going to convert. So Oregon just played an amazing game. And Dan Lanning clearly had his team fired up and ready to go. And he caught a lot of heat for his pregame comments about how they're trying to go for clicks and we're trying to go for wins. I didn't really have a problem with it. At the end of the day, it's fair game. We're just trying to, he's just trying to get the team fired up. And Colorado's obviously a team that is getting a lot of hype, and they're a good team, but obviously today they were showing that there's levels to this, and they're not on that level. So he was just trying to get his team fired up, and it worked. And I think Colorado is still a good team, and Dion. We still could be happy about what they're doing, and this is a team that could still win a few more games. I mean, I don't know why people think that this team is just terrible all of a sudden. They're not. Like, Oregon's just a really good team, and Colorado, like I said, they're not on that level. But this is a team that could still make a bowl game, that could still win about 7 games, I could see. So I think Dion, considering this is his first year, just being at 3 wins already is a success, considering they started last year. They had 1 win last year. So great game right there. Oregon, another team to watch out for in the Pac-12. It is a loaded conference this year. Going to be fun watching them going forward. Next game I want to talk about. Ohio State and Notre Dame. Now, this was probably the game of the day, but I started off with Colorado and Oregon because that's the game that's probably going to have the most viewers. And, but Ohio State, Notre Dame, if you're a really tight college football fan that watches all the games and watches every week, this was the biggest game of the week or had the most playoff implications. Both these teams early did not have much of a flow offensively. Both teams, were going 3 and out, and neither quarterback was able to get much going. And both these teams had opportunities in the red zone that they didn't capitalize on. Both teams had opportunities on 4th downs to convert, to extend drives. They didn't do that. And so it was I think it was 3-0 at the half, Ohio State, but it was a very lackluster first half, a very low scoring defensive battle. And you would obviously knew it was going to heat up a little bit in the second half, and it did. Both these teams in the second half kind of leaned on their run game, and Notre Dame had 176 yards on the ground. And they in the second half really leaned into that, and they had success. They had several drives where they scored touchdowns. Ohio State had a big run by Travion Henderson. That was like an end around, and he just it took his jets off and took it to the house, and it was just a very tight, low scoring defensive type of game. And I thought Notre Dame was going to win the game because I trusted Sam Hartman to make the throws and to be able to execute late in the game better than Kyle McCord. And I just thought Notre Dame's physicality up front and their run game would be something that could work against Ohio State. Ohio State has been one of the best rush defenses in the country this year, but like I said, Notre Dame's been one of the best rush offenses in the leagues in the college football. So it was like strength versus strength in aspect, and I would say Notre Dame won that battle in terms of just the rush defense versus rush offense. But both teams did a really good job in the back end of taking receivers out of plays and not allowing coverage bust and all this different type of stuff. So I thought both teams did a good job of that. But Notre Dame had a chance to win the game. But defensively, when you're giving up a 3rd and 19, there's 7 seconds on the clock, or there's like 10 seconds on the clock, and you allow Ohio State to convert on a 3rd and 19. I mean, you deserve to lose the game at that point. I mean, I don't know how you drop everybody in the coverage and you allow Ohio State to convert on a 3rd and 19. It's something that's going to kill Irish fans all season unless they can, win out, and it won't affect them too much. But it's got to be a tough way to lose, and they lost with a goal line, scored by Ohio State in the last second of the game. And McCord on that drive was, he wasn't great today. He obviously, you had a lot of Ohio State fans, complaining about him, as they have been the entire season so far. And he's not great. He's still clearly has some growing pains and still clearly is a step down from CJ Stroud and, Justin Fields and those type of quarterbacks. But he managed the game well enough for them to win. He got the ball out to, Cade Stover, Xavier Johnson, Emeka Egbuka, and this is a team that Marvin Harrison was, out the game for most of it, because he got hurt on that touchdown that Travion Henderson had. But he didn't have much of an effect on the game because of that. And he wasn't getting targeted much early in the game, and I thought that was part of their problem offensively. And Ohio State's play calling wasn't great. I mean, it was just several plays where I'm just like, bro, just run the ball. Stop trying to get cute. Run the ball, because they could have lost this game because they had a 4th down late in the in the 4th quarter that they didn't convert because they tried to do, run to the outside, run outside the tackles, just run inside the tackles and go get the first down. Like, stop trying to get pretty. And I think that was Ohio State's problem. But it didn't matter. They won the game. And like I said, Ohio State, this team is completely different from the Ohio State teams we've seen in recent memory with Ryan Day. Like, they've been high-powered offenses, explosive, high-scoring offenses. And so far this season, it doesn't feel like that same type of team. And I know against Western Kentucky, they ran up the score and they had a lot of points, but that's Western Kentucky. But Indiana, that game, they were getting shut down offensively. They had to lean into their run game in that one. Kyle McCord looked pedestrian. Youngstown State, not that explosive. They won 35-7, but not that explosive based off Ohio State standards. And then, today, really didn't get much going at all in this game, but they get out of there by the skin of their teeth. And I just think that if you're Ohio State, you feel good, obviously, because you won, but there's still room for improvement. And when they face Penn State and Michigan, I think some of the miscues they're making with their play calling and stuff is going to have to get cleaned up. But I do think one thing I was telling somebody who follows my Instagram page is that I do think Ohio State could potentially match up better with Michigan this year just because of the physicality of their defensive line. And how they run the football and the type of identity I feel like they have so far this season, which is kind of like, run the ball, win on our defense, be physical, stop the run, be a great defensive team, and we're going to lean on that. And so far, it seems like that's their identity. Now, it could change over the course of the season. And in the Big Ten, there's not a lot of competition this year. Outside of Penn State, Michigan, and then, maybe a Maryland or Wisconsin, there is not anything to worry about if you're Ohio State. So I think they're going to have plenty of time to work these things out before those type of, those matchups with Penn State and Michigan come. But, again, McCord didn't lose them the game, though. You got to give him credit. He was resilient and made some big-time throws. That 30-19 throw was a dot. And Emeka Egbuka, great catch by him. This is a talented Ohio State receiving corps still. And so I think they have the potential to still be very explosive offensively. They just haven't been. But it's because McCord isn't hasn't been the guy. And he doesn't have the same arm strength or accuracy that a CJ Stroud had, that a Justin Fields had. He doesn't have the mobility that a Justin Fields had. So it'll be interesting to see if Ohio State can, become more explosive as the season goes. But the offense looked great. The defense looked great, and you got to give them that. And as far as Notre Dame, I wouldn't worry too much. I still like this Notre Dame team a lot. I would not blame Sam Hartman for this because when the game was on the line, Sam Hartman made some big-time throws and drove Notre Dame down the field, in the fourth quarter. So I think as far as Notre Dame, their identity as long as Marcus Freeman is there, I feel like it's going to be defense. And this is a team that, has a great run game. Audrey estimates one of the best backs in the country. And I look at their schedule. Next week they have Duke, and that's a tough one. They have USC. They have Louisville, who's still unbeaten. Clemson on the road. We see what Clemson is so far. That might not be that tough of a game. But outside of that, Notre Dame could win every game. So I think Notre Dame is still a team that's very much in that playoff discussion if they can win out. It's going to be tough to beat, Caleb Williams, but Notre Dame wins that game in terms of the physicality. They win that matchup there. So we'll see how it goes. But a great game right there between two huge brands, and loved what I saw. I want to touch on Florida State and Clemson. This was a huge game in the ACC. Clemson's had Florida State's number for a while now. And Florida State coming off a tough game last week against Boston College. They won, but it wasn't their best performance. Clemson looking to kind of regain their spirits as a program after the early season loss, but 2 straight wins in dominant fashion the last 2 weeks. You come into this game feeling like, okay, we have Florida State's number. This is, we still want to prove we're the top dog in the ACC. And for the most part of this game, Clemson looked like the better team, or they played a better game. They actually outgained Florida State 429 to 311. And they outran Florida State 146 to 22 on the ground. So they controlled this game, but they shot themselves in the foot for sure. Miscues in terms of fumbles. Cade Klubnik had 2 fumbles. He played a solid game, but he also made mistakes, and that was the same issue against Duke. Cade Klubnik either not accurate or he's turning the ball over, whether it's a fumble, an interception, bad throw. Like he just has not been what they need him to be. And this is a team that got good games out of Phil Maffa and Will Shipley. They both had great, impactful games on the ground. And this Clemson team, like I said, was dominating, the line of scrimmage for a good part of this game. But late game execution was just fucking terrible. You had a chance to potentially set yourself up for a game-winning field goal. They missed a field goal. Florida State got the ball back. Clemson's defense held, and Clemson got the ball back with about, I think, like 15 seconds, something like that. They could have spiked the ball, got another play off, and then maybe after that try to kick a field goal to win the game. It would have been a long field goal, but you would have had a shot. They let the clock run out. No timeout, no spike. So goes to overtime. And a lot of people were critical of that, but you're right. Okay, well, whatever. We're going to overtime. Overtime, Florida State scores. Jordan Travis to Keon Coleman on a out route in the end zone. Great catch by Keon Coleman. We'll get to that in a minute. And then Clemson gets the ball back. You have 4 downs to get something going, and they get 2 there for I think it was a 3rd and 1. They don't get it, and then you get a 4th down, and instead of just running the football, they decide to throw a little screen pass to the outside, and Florida State's all over that, and the game is over. So you look at this team, it's just Clemson should have won this game, and they're still, a fairly talented team. They're not as talented as they used to be, but Dabo not doing a great job with the X's and O's and the play calling, and it paid dividends, and they lost the game because of that. Florida State, it's just not a pretty game at all, but they didn't beat themselves as much as Clemson did. One of those fumbles that Cade Klubnik had, he didn't see the pressure, and he got hit pretty hard, and he fumbled the ball, and Florida State takes that to the end zone. And this is a Clemson team. I felt like in the second quarter, the way Clemson was playing, I'm like, they're going to win this game. And I mean, because they were running the ball well. Cade Klubnik was playing pretty solid, and Florida State's defense, their pass defense is not good. I mean, they've been getting gashed through the air by LSU, BC, and now Clemson. So it felt like it was going to be a Clemson win, but again, they just shot themselves in the foot with the miscues they made, and it's the same story they had against Duke, and Florida State capitalized off of it. Jordan Travis, remained composed and made some clutch throws, and Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, Trey Benson all came down with some huge catches late in that game to help Florida State survive and stay unbeaten. This is a Florida State team now that you look at their schedule, they have Duke, who's ranked, and Miami, who's ranked. But outside of that, this schedule looks pretty clear. I don't know if Syracuse and Louisville are on their schedule. Those are 2 unbeaten teams left in ACC. I don't know if those 2 teams are on their schedule, so I can't speak on that. But I know North Carolina isn't, and that's probably one of the only other ranked teams in ACC. So Florida State could legitimately run the table, and even if they lose one game, if you're 11-1 with wins over LSU, Clemson, whoever else they beat, Florida State's path looks pretty clear for the most part, and their toughest games are at home. So I think Florida State, if you're a Florida State fan, you got to feel pretty good. Just got to clean up some of these errors on the defensive end and stop allowing yourself to get gashed the way you are. And they got to get more pressure on the quarterback, I think, because their secondary isn't great. So I think that's their best way to get stops. But they won the game, and that's all that matters. Fun game there in the ACC, and it looks like it's the end of that Clemson, run for the ACC. It looks like Florida State, North Carolina, Miami, those are the best teams in ACC now. I want to touch on some other games. Oregon State and Washington State. Let me talk about that one. Cam Ward, he was 28-34, 404 yards, 4 touchdowns, and Washington State was able to win this game 38-35. I think Washington State right now is a top 10 team. I mean, they've been very impressive. Their offense has looked pretty unstoppable. Cam Ward is firmly in that Heisman race after today's game. He's been exceptional this year. I'm sure he has like 1,000 yards passing on the season so far. They have 2 dynamic receivers in Kyler Williams and Josh Kelly. Both of them went over 150 yards receiving today. And this is a Washington State team that just took advantage of, a defense in Oregon State that has been great so far this season. Been very stellar. And Washington State just ran laps around them. Oregon State did get back into this game late though, because I think they outscored Washington State 21-3 in the fourth quarter. Uiagalelei, I'm so sorry, I cannot say that. He had a pedestrian game, but Oregon State was able to lean on their run game. They had 240 yards on the ground, and they were able to chip their way back in there. Uiagalelei, he hung in there despite that. He kept fighting and was able to bring Oregon State within 3. But they couldn't get a late onside kick, and Washington State was able to kneel the ball and win. But like I said, watch out for this Washington State team. Very explosive pass offense, and a team that it looks like kind of like a Mike Leach offense at Washington State, an air raid, high-powered offense, high scoring, and I like what I'm seeing out of them. I think they're a top 10 team right now based off what I've seen through 4 weeks. I know that might be crazy to some people, but not many teams have looked as impressive as them, and they're going to be a team that's going to be a tough out for anybody in the Pac-12 this year. They could throw that ball around, sling it. Their defense isn't great, but if you can score as much as they are scoring, I think it'll be fine. I want to touch on Ole Miss, Alabama. Jalen Milroe, he was the starter this week. Saban realized that he was their best bet. He's not great. He's going to make mistakes, but this is still a very talented player. And he was pretty efficient today with his throws. He was 17 of 21. He had 225 yards passing. He had a touchdown. He did throw an interception, a really bad interception in the red zone. But he played a solid game. He still got some of the same issues. He evades the pocket too quick. He's always looking to run. He doesn't see the field great. And he makes some poor decisions throwing the ball sometimes. But he's still an extremely talented runner. He can make some amazing throws. His touchdown throw he made was a dime. And, he's their best bet, clearly, for Alabama. And I think as long as he could just limit the turnovers, Alabama can still win the SEC West. Their defense is elite. And I think as long as your defense is playing this well, they held Ole Miss to 56 rushing yards, and this is an Ole Miss rushing offense that is really good. I mean, they have several backs that can really run the ball. Judkins is one of the best backs in the country, and they held him to 56 yards, and they held Ole Miss to 3 of 14 on third down. Jackson Dart didn't have a great game. A lot of people, I can't buy into the hype with him or this Ole Miss team because I just feel like they come in, a lot of people always think they're going to be a good team, and they usually are a good team, but they don't beat the teams that, really are going to elevate them. They don't ever beat the big dogs. They beat up on the teams they're supposed to beat, but when it comes to beating Alabama, last year LSU, and they got to play Georgia later this season. I mean, they're not beating those type of teams, and I think, when it comes to Ole Miss, same old. The offense did show up tonight or today, and their defense, Alabama is not a great offense this year, so it's not nothing their defense did. It's just more of Alabama not being great offensively this year. But they did get a pretty good balance of the passing and the running. I think there's still things they can clean up, but like I said, their defense is elite. They're going to be a tough out for anybody in the SEC West. They're still a very talented team. Jace McClellan, great running back, had 105 yards on the ground. And, Jalen Milroe, like I said, hopefully he will improve on some of the areas he's still lacking, but he's talented. You can't deny that. And I think Saban will get him right, and I think Alabama will be fine for the rest of the season. UCLA, Utah. This was another interesting game in the Pac-12 today. We had 3 ranked matchups in the Pac-12. Dante Moore just had no time to throw for UCLA. Utah got 7 sacks on him today. They were getting to him almost every play, and UCLA had no ground game. Their offensive line got completely slaughtered by Utah's D-line. And Utah's defense has been elite so far this year, in my opinion, at least in terms of just not allowing teams to score. They haven't allowed more than 13 points on the season. And this is a Utah team that's now 4-0 without Cam Rising playing in any of those games. And today they were without their tight end, Brant Kuithe, who's their best offensive weapon. But they didn't have to do much offensively when their defense is forcing as much pressure as they were and getting UCLA behind the sticks as often as they were. And Dante Moore is fairly inefficient in the passing game, 15 to 35. He did have one late game, touchdown drive. When UCLA was just desperate to get anything because the game was on the line. But outside of that, UCLA was pretty shut down. They got outgained or they were only 3 of 17 on third down. They did outgain Utah, and like UCLA played a great defensive game. Albeit, like I said, Utah is out two of their top players on offense. Still a pretty good defensive, showing for them as they've shown all season. But they have not played great competition, so this was kind of their first real test. I think UCLA is still going to be a solid team this year. Dante Moore has shown flashes. He's a freshman. He's going to continue to get better, but his talent is obviously showing, and I think UCLA fans are happy to see him be at that quarterback spot because he didn't start the year at the quarterback, but he has, earned the spot. And I think Utah, when you look at them, when they get Rising back, I mean, this team could beat anybody in the Pac-12. Their defense is really good, and their offense is not as explosive as some of these other teams in Pac-12, but Cam Rising's still a very, smart veteran quarterback, and you're going to have a chance to beat anybody, and they've won the Pac-12 the last 2 years, and they're as physical as anybody in the Pac-12, so it'll be interesting to see them going forward, but great game there. Well, not a great game. It was a very boring game. I had to turn it off a lot just because, there wasn't much going on, but Utah, credit to them, they got the win. I want to talk about Penn State versus Iowa. Complete domination. Iowa's offense continues to be terrible. Penn State outgained Iowa 397 yards to 76 yards, and they had 215 yards on the ground, 28 first downs to Iowa's 4, and they held Iowa to 1 of 9 on third down. So Iowa also had 4 fumbles. I mean, it was just an ugly game for Iowa offensively. Penn State's defense has looked really good, really stellar through 4 games. They have not played an explosive offense, though. So I do wonder, how they'll look against, well, in the Big Ten, they don't face an explosive offense. I think Maryland and Ohio State and Michigan are the best offenses they'll face. But so that might not even be a concern. But Drew Allar continues to look really good. He didn't put the ball in harm's way today. He had a, solid game. But especially in the red zone, we need to, score. He had 4 touchdowns through the air, and put them all right on target, and it was lofting them over defenders. So I thought he did a pretty good job. And Penn State, like I said, they're going to be a team that's going to try to dominate you defensively. They're a team that's going to be physical. You're not going to be able to get much through the air on them. They're going to, their D-line's very stout. And James Franklin, that's been Penn State's identity the last few years. But quarterback play seems a little bit better this year. And their offense in general, has just been pretty good on the ground. And I think Penn State's a team that's going to be a tough out for Ohio State and Michigan. I can't wait to see them play those teams because those are really the only teams we're going to really learn anything about Penn State from. So I like what I've seen out of them, though, like I said, especially from their defense. If they keep this up, they should keep winning all their games until they face Ohio State and Michigan. Some other teams I want to touch on. Yeah, Texas, they blew out Baylor 38-6. Quinn Ewers was 18 of 23 with 293 yards. They outgained Baylor 503 yards to 365 yards. Texas continues their early season success. The win at Bama was obviously their most impressive, but the other 3 games they won going away. Their offenses look great to start the year. Quinn Ewers has been extremely accurate in showing his NFL potential, here to start the season. And this is a team with a lot of weapons, and they're going to be a tough out. I don't see anyone in Big 12 that can really play with them outside of Oklahoma. Big 12 looks really weak. So Texas and Oklahoma, when they meet, that's going to be the class of the Big 12 this year. And Texas, taking care of business. That's good to see because Texas in past years maybe loses a game like this to Baylor, but this year, taking care of business, like to see that. Michigan, they haven't played anybody great to start the year either. I'm very disappointed to see what their non-conference has been the last few years, but that changes next year, so I'm going to give them a pass. But they beat Rutgers 31-7. JJ McCarthy, 15 of 21 with 214 yards. They had 200 yards rushing. And just, did what they were supposed to do against a solid Rutgers team. Rutgers isn't as bad as they used to be. They're definitely improving as a program, but controlled the game. Got off to a slow start, but in the second half, they outscored Rutgers 17-0. This is a Michigan team, like I said, they're not going to really get challenged until they play Penn State, Ohio State, just like it is with the other two. So we're not going to learn too much about them until then. But this is a team we know based off the last 2 years is very physical. They like to pound the rock. Their quarterback, a lot of play action, a lot of quick, game, and just don't turn the ball over, manage the game well. JJ McCarthy's been very efficient and very accurate. They haven't played anybody great who can really challenge them, but he's been that way his entire, career since they started him at Michigan. So I don't think it would change even if they're playing Penn State and Ohio State. But Michigan looking like they should through 4 games. I just hate seeing them not play anybody, because it's like you want to see them play somebody who can put up any type of resistance. They played East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, and now Rutgers. So we don't know too much about them, but we'll learn as the season goes on. But good win for them. LSU is the last team I'm going to touch on. They beat Arkansas in a shootout, 34-31. Jaden Daniels, ever since the Florida State game, has been locked in and very good. 20 of 29, 320 yards passing, 4 touchdowns. You have Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, who both were over 130 yards receiving. This is a very explosive LSU offense. And LSU, outside of one half against Florida State, has been pretty unstoppable offensively. So I think you got to feel good about where they're at. I think it's going to come down to them and Alabama in the SEC West. And they kind of have contrasting styles. Alabama's a kind of, defensive-minded team, not very explosive offensively this year. LSU's very explosive offensively, and they don't play much defense. So it'll be interesting to see those two when they match up in Tuscaloosa later in the year. But if those two face off, Jaden Daniels, I definitely trust more than I trust Jalen Milroe. So that could give them an edge. But this is an LSU team. They're gonna have to improve their defense in general, their pass defense especially. But if Jaden Daniels is playing like this, they're gonna be a tough team to beat. And they have great skill players. Brian Kelly's a great coach, and he usually LSU didn't start out great last year, but as the season progressed, they got better and better. So I would assume it'll be the same thing this season with them. And yeah, I think it was a good showing for them against Arkansas, an Arkansas team that should have been 3-0 coming into this game had they not blew a game against BYU last week. But a solid team. KJ Jefferson and Jaden Daniels are 2 of the best quarterbacks in the SEC this year, because it's not a great quarterback conference this year. Spencer Rattler and these 2 quarterbacks are probably the best quarterbacks in the league this year. So it was a good game right there between 2 of the SEC's best quarterbacks. But yeah, that's all I'm gonna pretty much have to say. Great week of college football. Can't wait till next week. College game day will be going to Duke for Notre Dame, and Duke should be a good one. But next week's slate is, solid, but it does not compare to this week's slate. We do get Shador versus Caleb Williams. I feel like the hype behind it isn't the same, based off how Colorado played today. But I mean, Shador is still a great quarterback, and these are 2 guys that a lot of people have been talking about being the top 2 picks in the draft. Shador has a chance to redeem himself. I do think Colorado's going to play a lot better because I don't think USC is as physical as Oregon is. They're not as good defensively. So I think Colorado will have much better chance in this game, and it's at home. And I don't think they can play any worse than they did last week. I don't think they're going to stop USC's offense at all. I don't think they're going to be able to stop Caleb. And our receiving core of USC, that is just extremely dynamic. They're going to get gashed a lot, but they're going to be able to score some points. And I think it'll be a fun game. So can't wait till next week. Let me know what y'all think about my analysis. What type of videos would y'all like me to make next? And comment your thoughts on this week's games. And yeah, that's it. It's been Will Sports. Peace.